The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So here we are at day 5 of the retreat. This is our last formal Dharma talk. We'll have other opportunities to talk about the Dharma at the Saturday night discussion. So if you have questions related to things we've covered this week, that'll be an opportunity to bring them up. And tomorrow is going to be a little different in the sense that maybe it's not that different, but we'll have a ceremony in the morning, and then we're going to watch a film about Great Master Dogen in the afternoon, and then there's discussion in the evening. I just encourage you to kind of keep your attention up. You know, the retreat's not over until Sunday. Everything can be a meditation. As we said yesterday in the discussion, even reading a book or watching a film can be part of every minute meditation. Everything we do can be an offering of merit. If we consider that everything we do is every minute meditation, and everything that we do can be an offering of merit, it behooves us to be careful what it is we're doing. Be careful of what you watch on TV or look up on the internet. Be careful what you listen to. Be careful about what you read. I wanted to follow up yesterday's lecture with a couple comments. One, when I said that Reverend Master Jiu compared her How to Grow a Lotus Blossom to the Lotus Scripture, what I understood her to mean was that she took the teachings of the Lotus Sutra to heart. She practiced what it taught, and as a result she experienced what it taught. By practicing what it taught, she turned herself into a lotus blossom. From the roots in the mud, to the long stem, to the surface of the water, to blooming in the light of day. And as such, she became a lotus scripture. This is why we use lotuses so much in our iconography. You know, Buddhas almost often sit in a lotus. Your meditation cushion is considered to be a lotus. Those of you who sit on benches or in chairs, you have to use a little imagination. The spirit is still there. That is what you are sitting within, on. We can each be a lotus scripture. Dogen teaches us, become a scripture. Become a Buddha. Become a scripture. As you internalize the teachings, as you internalize the Dharma, your life shows that. You can't help but teach, as one of our masters said. Second, one short little thing about every minute meditation. It's a way that I think about it that can be helpful. It's actually about meditation, period. It's about serene reflection meditation, both the formal meditation but also the active meditation. It's very much like a flashlight that I have. It has a ring around the light, the light end, and it's kind of a ratchet. I don't know if that's the right term, but you can, turn the outside of the head and get different focuses of light, everywhere from a very sharp pinpoint to very wide, all the way up, lighting everything around you. I find this is a good way to think about meditation. Yes, we want to be concentrated. Concentrate all our light to illumine one thing. At the same time, we want to be still. We want to be aware of everything around us. So we run the flashlight the other end. This is, and how we sit is right in the middle. We use enough light to look at the thing that is in front of us, that we need to see. But we don't do it to the exclusion of blocking out or not seeing everything else around us. And so at the other end, we don't want to just be completely having our light dispersed everywhere and not being able to see the thing that's in front of us. So we need some frontal vision and we need some side vision. And they're both necessary. It's like driving a car. You need to pay attention to what's in front of you. But you also need to be paying attention to what's happening around you. The car is trying to pass you. So that's how I sometimes think about meditation. In terms of, we talked about concentration and insight. We try not to end up at either end. They're extremes, and we may miss something. If we don't keep our focus somewhere in the middle, or switching back and forth. I tell you when driving, you should be constantly looking at your 2 or 3 rear view mirrors. You don't look just in front of you. If you look just in front of you, you may also run into the truck that's 10 feet in front of you that you didn't see because you were looking immediately in front of the car. So that's just a way that I find helpful for thinking about meditation and the particular kind of meditation that we do. We talked yesterday in the discussion about keeping the eyes open. We're not trying to slip into a trance. We're not actually trying even to slip into a state of samadhi. We want to go on beyond samadhi. We don't want to get stuck with peace and bliss. There's something more. There's always something more. Don't get stuck at any place along the way. Keep going on. Okay, Dogen's writings on life and death. Shoji. I'll start with Reverend Master Hubert's introduction, which I find just really helpful. In this text, Dogen plays with various nuances of the word shoji, as translated as living and dying. It refers to the ever-flowing, ever-changing conditions that have no permanency. Okay, that's the existence-time flow that we've been talking about through the week. That's the flow in the fountain. Reverend Master Hubert continues, whereas life and death refers to the delusion of static, unchanging conditions that are created by a judgmental mind. The self. We start off with discriminating in something that's really necessary for our survival, to have a self and an other, an in here and an out there. We learn to do that as children very early on at some point. Our teachers, our parents teach us this. Don't put a handful of poop in your mouth. Babies don't know the difference between that and food. This happens to most, if not all of us. And as we continue to grow, our discriminatory mind gets called into play more and more. And then it gets turned toward things that don't have an actual base in reality. Such as race, white people and black people. Religion, Hindus and Muslims. Jews and Christians. How much suffering has been created down the centuries because of people's belief in religion. It's frightening. And we still live at that precipice today. Dogen teaches us to look beyond the single moments of our awareness. To really see that everything is this moving flow. I think of it sometimes as the difference between using a camera and a video camera. A snapshot camera is continually taking shots, single shots. So you end up with a whole bunch of frozen moments in time. A video camera comes much closer to how reality is. It captures that ever-moving flow of life, the living and dying. So Great Master Dogen starts with quoting a couple of Chinese ancestors. And by the way, I thought I should mention that when Dogen is talking about these various masters and calling their teaching into question, he's talking about people who are 200 or 300 years dead in China, in a different country. They're references that people would know about. They're from koan stories. As far as I know, he doesn't ever mention anyone who is actually living. He does say some pretty rude things about scholars. Scholarship can be a useful tool in the study of the Dharma. And we have to endeavor to put the practice first. Be careful what you read. There are many things written out there. It's helpful to read things by practitioner scholars. Scholars who are actually practicing. Who know what they're talking about from an intuitive, experiential point of view. They're usually studying with a master too. They have to answer to their master. What are you telling people? This is why, for me, Reverend Master Hubert's translation is, for me, is so wonderful. He brings his scholarly mind to the topic. He brings his artistic sensitivity to the topic. He brings his practice to the topic. He brings the teachings of his master to the topic. He gets at what Dogen is meaning, what Dogen is trying to say, and what's below the words. So Dogen starts with giving two quotes that are contradictory. I'm not going to go into those. I'll just say he does that. It will kind of unsettle us. He's showing a set of opposites. Well, this master said such and such, and that master said just the opposite. What's going on here? Dogen takes us off our seat. We can't rest in either place. And then he offers us the Dharma. He offers us the third position. He says, anyone who wishes to be freed from life and death should clarify this principle. Should you seek for Buddha outside of living and dying, you're like the one who pointed his cart north and drove off to the country in the south, or like someone who faces south, hoping to see the North Star. Simply put, living and dying is what nirvana is. For there is nothing to despise in living and dying, nor anything to be wished for in nirvana. Nirvana is here and now. It's in this moment. It's not a separate place or something that's going to happen later on. This is the Pure Land right here. What kind of choices are we making? Are we intending? Are we trying? Are we endeavoring to see this as a Pure Land? Are we looking up? Finding some meaning, some value in what's happening around us? We're turning what's happening around us into some kind of teaching, something of value. Reverend Margaret was talking about this yesterday in the discussion. Reverend Master asked her as well. Our present moment is created by our past karma. It's barreling down I-5 at us. We can't do anything about that. We can't do anything about what's already set in motion. But we can do something about this moment. We have a choice. And then we have a choice in the next moment. And the next moment. And the next moment. It changes our perspective on how we are viewing our present circumstances, our present situation. Can we find meaning from that? Can we see, as Reverend Master Jiyu said, that everything is happening for our good? That's a scary statement. In this moment, we direct the continuation of our whole life. One of the things they discovered in space research, I believe, is that they fire the rocket to Mars, say. They've computed all the angles and degrees and direction, but they have to keep continually tweaking that direction and those instructions. At some point, we have to turn our lives around, as we said in the beginning. Awaken the Buddha-seeking mind. And the next moment, try to keep it awake. And then the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment. And we're creating our future. It may take a long time for that future to manifest in a way that we might hope. We may still have a heavy load of karma to clean up right now that's already socked you. Can we turn that into something good? That in itself helps create a future life right here in the here and now. Don't worry about future life. Right now, it plants the seeds for something good, because it is good. The baby Buddha has been born. Keep nourishing it with compassion. Keep nourishing it with wisdom. This moment is the only place, the only time that we can do anything about. Right now. The next moment, any one of you or all of you could run out of this building. Any one of you could just turn me off and say, gosh, he said that already. I don't want to hear this again. You can let your attention stray to, what's this person next to me doing? They're not sitting correctly. This moment is the only thing that we can influence. This is what Dogen is referring to when he says that birth and death are points in time. As he says, delusion of static, unchanging condition. Are we willing to admit that we're actually deluded? The fact that all of you are here means that you have stepped out of delusion. The fact that you're meditating means you have begun to turn things around. That you are accepting the consequences of the past. That you are taking what is happening for your good. You are creating a future that has less suffering. Dogen continues, at this very time, there is a distinction that frees us right off from life and death. It is a mistake to think that we go from being alive to being dead. Being alive is a position at one moment in time. It already has its past, and it will have its future. Therefore, within the Buddha Dharma, we say that life is beyond just the act of being born. Death is also a position at one moment in time. And it too has its past and its future. Accordingly, we say that death is beyond the act of just dying. In the time we call living, there is nothing except life. And in the time we call dying, there is nothing except death. When life comes, it is simply life. And when death comes, it is simply death. When facing up to them, do not say that you want to cling to the one or push the other away. Death is just a moment in time. From what I understand, have read and studied and hopefully learned from the best people I know, at the moment of death, we're given a choice. What do we make of that choice? Right now, as you practice, right now, as you work with your mind, right now, as you become aware of your choices, right now, as you strengthen the mind of meditation. The analogy doesn't quite work, but we're trying to strengthen our ability to let go. Right now, are we willing to let go of our perception of a static, unchanging condition? Death is just a point in time, says Dogen. Reverend Master Jiyu said it's just like walking through a door. What is the choice that we make when that door opens? What is the choice that we make when we step through that door? And then what are our subsequent choices? In one sense, as I understand it, and as I talked about it yesterday, we don't have to worry about what happens after death. Train right now. So when that time comes, when that moment comes, you can be still, you can look up. You can take refuge in the three treasures. No matter how difficult, how painful it is, we try to sit still and look up. We have a choice. And so it greatly behooves us to practice making choices that have consequences that have less suffering, that have consequences that benefit sentient beings. As you folks sit here, I know some of you are having emotional pain. Some of you are having physical pain. Some of you may be having intellectual pain, trying to grasp what the heck is Reverend Oswin talking about. What is Dogen talking about? This just doesn't make any sense. This isn't what I've read. Right now, we can make a choice, what's sometimes called turning the stream of compassion within. We activate the fountain. We keep making choices that propel us, that lead us down a road that diminishes suffering. Not only for ourselves, but for others. What are we going to do when we step through that door? What are we going to do when we meet that moment in time we call death? Maybe we're making too much fuss about this thing called death. If it's a moment in time, well, it's a moment in time. How is it different than any other door? How is it any different than this next moment that we're sitting here and we're being still and we're looking up? Her Master Jew said the best way to prepare for death is to live a victorious life, to live a good life, to live a life in accord with the precepts, to live a life in which we may have caused harm, but we have faced it squarely. We've turned around. We've determined, I really don't want to do that again. We may have regret for what we've done. But there's no guilt. Regret, yes. Guilt, no. Regret enables us to move ahead. Dogen talks in the Shobogenzo about full and open confession, true conviction. We recognize what we've done. We face up to it. And earnest endeavor. We do our very best to live in the next moment, the rest of our life, in accord with the precepts. So that when we get to our deathbed, hopefully, we won't have anything to regret. Or we may have things to regret, but we won't feel guilty about them. We know that we have done what we could about them. We won't have unfinished business. We're talking as if death comes at the end of a long life. That seems to be what's happening to most people, and we're living longer, so a lot of attention is getting focused on death. We could all die in the next moment. Mount Shasta could erupt. They usually have some warning about volcanoes erupting. But we could have an earthquake. We live in earthquake country. These faults lie under us. That's why there's magma. That's why there's hot lava in Mount Shasta, and why they consider it perhaps not an active volcano, but it's a dormant volcano. I've read some places that say Mount Shasta is the next one to erupt. Of the volcanoes that go up and down the west coast. I don't know. You could be going home the next couple of days and die in a car accident. We recently had a fellow monk who, was just going to the dentist. And someone in the opposite lane came around the corner and ran into him head on. I try to remember that every time I go into town. I may not make it back to the monastery. Am I ready to die right now? Have I done the very best I can about my past, what I've done? Am I planting good seeds for the future? Am I ready to go right now, in the next moment? Doing this practice, doing meditation, is the very best thing you can do in preparation for death. There is nothing that will prepare you more fully. Try to make everything that you do a meditation. Practice every minute meditation. It has very significant consequences down the road. You may think nothing's happening, as usual, but something is. Again, Reverend Master Jew taught us that we're each the worst judge of our own training. Reverend Master Hewitt says that this delusion of life and death is created by a judgmental mind. Why do we label life as good and death as bad? And you are, as you practice, as you meditate, and if you find another path to meditate, fine. Find the one that's right for you. It's the very best thing that you can do in preparation for death. And it's also the very best thing you can do for whatever comes after. I'm going to continue living the way I do right now, regardless of what comes after death. If there's nothing, which I don't think there is true, but if it's so, how does that change the way that I'm living right now? Would I not still want to be endeavored to keeping the precepts? Whatever you're doing right now is influencing whatever follows death. So we don't have to worry about this rebirth stuff. I've never had a problem accepting the idea of rebirth. Maybe I just had very strong Buddhist karma. It just immediately made sense. People worry too much about this. Practice right now. Now is when you can influence whatever comes after death. Whatever comes after that point in time we call death. Focus on the living and dying. Focus on the existence time flow rather than these little snapshots, rather than these little moments of consciousness. Focus on the Buddha. Dogen ends this section with when we simply let go of and forget all about my body and my mind, these little moments of time which are seen from the center of the universe we call ourselves, my body, my mind, arranging all the moments in time as if it's centered on us, relinquishing them to the life of Buddha. That's L with a capital F. Relinquish them to the flow. Relinquish them to the existence time flow that runs through all things. That's what that first diagram I made is trying to show. Buddha nature is permeating all. Where are you putting your focus? Are you focusing on the permeable membrane? Or are you focusing on the light that is at the center, but which has no center? That's what Zen masters are trying to show when they do the circle with calligraphy. They're trying to show that everything is empty, everything is pure. Even the line itself is a delusion. Even the line itself is a concession to our judgmental mind, that we create an inside and an outside. But in order to talk about it, well, what do? Well, the simplest thing, you can draw a line and say, here's the self, and this is inside and that's outside, but it's really, that line is not really there. And yet from the point of view of karma, it is there. People do reap the consequences of what they do, of what they sow. That's what creates these membranes. This is what creates us and separates us from the life of Buddha. But there's always a chance, there's always the opportunity to get back on the road. When we do the Buddha's Parinirvana festival here, one of the chants we do says something, always seek to get back on the path. Always seek to get back on the path. Always seek to get back on the path. We can. There's nothing obstructing us from doing that except our judgment of ourselves. Do I feel worthy to be back on the path? Well, I'm not sure. We're wasting a lot of time. Get back on the path. Let my mind and my body be put into operation from the vantage point of Buddha. Then, when we rely on this, following where it leads, it with a capital I, without forcing the body or laboring the mind, we free ourselves from life and death and become Buddha. We don't practice asceticism. We don't force the body. We don't labor the mind. We don't worry too much about this. We just go about daily life. Life in the monastery is very ordinary. We get up, we sit. Somebody has to cook breakfast. We eat. We go and do our work in our monastic offices. We might meditate again before lunch, but usually our responsibilities, our promises to help other beings, our vows to help other beings, engage us in additional, what we call working meditation. You're so fortunate at a retreat to get to sit. There's lunch, there's cleanup. We rest. Rest itself can be the life of Buddha. And then we work a little more, and then we have supper, and sometimes we have an informal meal at supper where, we talk with each other, catch up on the day. It's all a part of the life of Buddha. And then we rest again or do a little spiritual reading, and then we go. Then we retire. I can remember that's one of the things that I can remember in particular one of the masters would say to us when the monks would have a formal, sort of like what you're doing with formal sanzen. And someone would ask this profound question about, how can I be free of birth and death? Or how can I be Buddha? And he would just always say, well, you get up in the morning, and you go to meditation. And then you prepare breakfast. We probably fit morning service in there. Breakfast, we eat breakfast, we clean up, we go to work. It can all seem very ordinary. It all depends upon the mind that we're bringing to those activities. And that's our choice. When you come for a retreat, there's a schedule that's made out. You're expected to follow the schedule. You have a choice. Dogen continues, and who would want to become stuck in their own minds? There is an extremely easy way to become Buddha. Simply, do not adhere to any evil whatsoever. We do our very best to keep the precepts. We do our very best to not create suffering, prevent future suffering. He continues, do not become attached to life or death. Look at what we're hanging on to. This is what the Buddha said was the cause of suffering, was our desire, our attachments, our aversions. This goes right back to the Four Noble Truths. This is Buddhism 101. He continues, have compassion for all sentient beings. We're all in this together. Help others. Helping others helps yourself. He says, respect those who are spiritually above you. Otherwise, seek advice. Listen and try to put it into practice to the best you can. It used to be that when you're doing a research paper, when I was growing up, you go out in search of information and then you kind of pull it together and write a paper. Now, there's so much information, you go out and you have to sift through it all and decide what's important. That's why I say be careful what you read. Ask a monk, ask someone, what's a good thing for me to be reading and studying these days? Monks don't teach unless we're invited. We invite you to this retreat. You're here, we teach. You're not going to go out there on a corner and start proclaiming the Dharma. There has to be an invitation in order for someone to hear the Dharma. There has to be an opening in their heart to hear the Dharma. You have opportunities. You have choices. Dogen continues, rid yourself of the mental attitude that deplores the 10,000 things as they sprout up. There's a lot of things not to like. But he continues, and the mental attitude that craves them. There's a lot to crave, get, lust, want. Let your mind be free of judgmentalism and free of worry. Can we let go of the judgmental mind? Meditation makes, as we talked yesterday in the discussion, meditation helps us to make the first step in recognizing our attachment. It says earlier, have pity on those who are spiritually less advanced than you. Don't judge others. Have compassion for them. Offer merit to them. Be careful that you don't fall into the precept about pride. I stepped right in it this morning, talking with some other monks. I'll say, oh, some of us, da-da-da-da-da-da. I stepped in it just like it was a fresh cow patty. Also quickly, we're talking about the Vinaya, and keeping the Vinaya, keeping the monastic rules. Now I end the conversation by stepping in it. Don't judge others. And you may have a job where you have to make decisions. That's one thing. Love them as you make your choices. Dogen says that this being free of judgmentalism and free of worry is what we call being a Buddha. We're all here to be Buddha. What is Buddha? What is enlightenment? They're abstract concepts. But we can know them in our own heart. We can know that they're real. How do we become Buddha? Well, we follow these suggestions Dogen gave us. We work on keeping the precepts. We take refuge in each other. We practice compassion. We practice generosity. So many different ways that we can practice. But as I said earlier in the week, we combine this practice, this letting go of attachment and aversion. We combine it with the compassion to help other beings. Wisdom and compassion. And Dogen ends with, and do not seek after anything else. Can we be content with a teaching as simple as this? This is why in monasteries you have an experience and, the seniors say, well, it could be important. Oh, maybe not. Even if you reach a wonderful state of samadhi, The Master will say, well, that's nice, but it's not the important thing. This undermines our craving. This undermines our wanting. We go on. We move on. Buddhahood still, full Buddhahood is still in the future. Don't waste your time by hanging out someplace where it's blissful and nice. Whether that's in the physical realm or the spiritual realm or the emotional realm. You have choices to make. The Eternal has all the time in the universe. What are we doing with our time? What are the choices that we're making right now that influence, develop, create our future life? Whatever that may be. Hell, heaven. By continuing to make the choice right now to be still, to look up, to be compassionate. This is how we create our future. And if we're doing the very best we can right now, how can we do any better? Sometimes we can see how we can do better. But we're still doing the very best we can. And when we can see that we can do better, we do so. What a better way to prepare for death, for whatever lies beyond death, than practicing right now. What are the choices you're making right now? Homage to all of the Buddhas in all worlds. Homage to all of the Bodhisattvas in all worlds. Homage to the scripture of great wisdom.